solutions are baked. Yesterday, I encouraged participants in this summit to disregard the grievance standpoint and instead consider climate action imperative through an opportunity lens. As soon as we do that, a nexus of feasible sequences begins to emerge in an unbroken continuum from potential to opportunity, and through investments and technological innovation into green manufacturing and industrialization, including shared prosperity. Our untapped renewable energy potential, together with the world's youngest population of skilled, motivated, and knowledgeable industrial men and women, along with Africa's abundant endowment of natural assets from carbon sinks to arable land and mineral wealth, confer on us the indispensable fundamentals to swiftly become a cost-competitive industrial hub with ample capacity to decarbonize global manufacturing and green the economies of our continent, our neighborhoods, and the globe. It is good for us to be open about the need to confront a couple of basic truths. First, it is demonstrably clear that none of the world's industrialized nations will be able to achieve their net zero goals within the time indicated by scientists to avert further warming. Secondly, unlocking Africa's potential to undertake economic transformation along a green trajectory is the most feasible, just, and efficient way to attain a net zero world by 2050. With those two combined, Africa's capacity to limit its own emissions is the clearest pathway to enable the world to achieve its climate action targets. Africa's opportunity is a global opportunity and a chance for humanity to redeem its intergenerational legacy. Scientific experts have consistently demonstrated, from analyzing available evidence and making projections, that these can be achieved while generating jobs in their millions, creating enormous investment opportunities, and catalyzing unprecedented economic growth. Under a proper green growth paradigm, climate action also serves as a robust engine for poverty reduction, employment and wealth creation, and economic transformation. By definition, effective climate action must entail technological leapfrogging to disrupt and invent the industrial development pathway and go green fast. It must also involve effective decarbonization of global production and supply chains and deliberate efforts to remove carbon from the atmosphere at scale. Understood this way, green growth aligns perfectly with opportunity-oriented perspectives of climate change, which presents Africa with its most important means of achieving stability, prosperity, and development beyond middle-income industrial status. To achieve green growth, we in Africa have committed to move with speed and under various effective frameworks to develop the necessary instruments, institutions, policies, and strategies through which we shall design and implement incentives that will accelerate the delivery of priority actions. We shall also support our youth, especially most salient implication of this knowledge is that we cannot approach climate action and human development from a disconnected or adversarial standpoint. We cannot pursue climate action through insular, solitary policies. Global warming cannot be mitigated by air conditioning our little pockets and corners of the world. Prosperity cannot and must not be pursued in a zero-sum, exclusive fashion because the resulting injustice and inequality are the drivers of inequity, poverty, conflict, and activities that threaten biodiversity and encourage pollution. We are all interconnected. That is a statement of fact. And this existential moment provides us with a unique opportunity to reconnect with our shared humanity. In this summit, you will have heard and will continue to learn more about the bold, transformative, innovative fruits of partnerships, cooperation, and collaboration that are already underway in various parts of Africa. I invite you to pay close attention to as many of these cases as possible, and assure you that you will be surprised, challenged, and inspired by the many wonderful demonstrations of bold initiatives in the face of many opportunities. That is the essence of this summit. It is an orientation, and in fact, an orientation run designed to familiarize us with our journey into the future, driven by African solutions, powered by African resources, and anchored on African opportunities. The collaboration I have in mind must be bold in ambition, broad in scope for their vision, deep in terms of diversity of their stakeholders, and long in terms of their geographical reach. An impressive example that I have had opportunity to interact with is the Global Center for Adaptation, an organization based in Rotterdam in the Netherlands, whose constitution is an appealing emblem of our aspiration from the aspirational design of its global headquarters and futuristic regional headquarters in Nairobi, comprising green walls and roofs as well as rain gardens, to the collaborative culture of its staff. Unsurprisingly, the center is intended to inspire the world to thrive with nature instead of pursuing the dangerous course of seeking to thrive at the expense of nature. The center spearheads the Africa Adaptation Acceleration Program, a focal point collaboration with the University of Nairobi, Africa Development Bank, and the Africa Union Commission as part of the continent's response to the climate crisis. I am delighted to announce that as an outcome of this summit today, Kenya will host the GCA Africa headquarters here in Nairobi. Ladies and gentlemen, it has taken tremendous courage, effort, and determination to leave behind us the old continent that was historically profiled with intense negativity. The Africa whose people neither are there to be seen or heard has summoned the confidence and readiness to confront hard facts, engage truthfully, and forge a common position on critical issues that project a new, bold, radically transformative voice into the global discourse. And let me say here that we have discussed potential. And it is true, we need to have a conversation about Africa's potential. Why? Because we have been profiled negatively. The continent of disease, war, poverty. But we are stepping forward to say, look here, Africa is the continent with 60% of the world's renewable energy assets. Whether you talk about wind, whether you talk about solar, geothermal, hydropower. Number two, we're saying Africa is the continent that has 40% of the world's critical minerals for energy transition, whether you talk about nickel, cobalt, lithium, manganese. This is where those reserves are. Number three, this is the continent, the youngest continent with a median age of 19. 25% of the world's population will be living in this continent by 2050. We will have 40% of the world's workforce by 2100. This is the continent number 4 that has 2/3 of the world's uncultivated arable land that can transform through smart agriculture into the store, the production store of the world. And number 5, this is the continent that is the lungs of the world. We have the largest natural carbon sequestration infrastructure. In fact, we dare say, if there was a company for collecting garbage globally, and I'm talking about carbon garbage, Africa would have the largest shares because we have the largest lungs. The only problem is that those who produce the garbage refuse to pay their bills and profile the company as broke when it is actually them who have refused to pay the bills. So that is our continent. It's a continent of tremendous potential. And that is why Chinua Achebe told us that until the lion learned the art of writing, all stories glorified the hunter. I think we have learned to write. I think we have learned the art of writing. And that is why we are going to write our own narrative. That is the continent that we belong to. Let me also say another thing, opportunity. Yes, this climate crisis, climate change, and the climate crisis that comes with it, yes, it is true. We have protected the beasts. Yes, it is also true. We are suffering the most. But in this crisis is Africa's opportunity. And that is what we want to focus on. Africa's opportunity to unlock the tremendous resources that we have for green energy transition. And we must exploit this opportunity. And number 3, so that I conclude, is that this is the continent that has the highest investment potential. We are only limited by 2 things. Number 1, we are limited, as I said earlier in my statement, by high interest rates for development capital. Many of our countries, and we are here and they say figures don't lie, 9 countries are already in debt distress in our continent, over the cliff. 13 countries are classified as high risk, and another 17 countries are classified as moderate risk. And the biggest contributor to debt distress in our continent is high interest rates. We pay 5 times more than others. Meaning that in fact, the architecture is set up in a manner that if you borrow, it will be difficult for you to pay. And that is why we need a conversation, and a very candid conversation, and we are saying this in all honesty, around how do we get concessional funding? How do we pay as much as others are paying? How do we get Africa away from paying 5 times more? And I asked in this gathering, we're not asking to be favored. We're not asking to be treated differently. We want a fair financial system that treats everybody equally. Ladies and gentlemen, that is not too much to ask. A fair international financial architecture is not a fair proposition or an unfair proposition to make. Number two, many of our countries are headed into debt distress because of climate change. Let's be honest. We are suffering the most, whether it is in the Sahel with drought, whether it is in the Horn of Africa with drought, whether it is in South Africa and the southern part of our continent with cyclones, and we are saying the suffering is across the globe, but we carry the biggest brand. I'll contextualize this. And because of climate change, we are forced to divert resources that are meant for economic growth into dealing with the effects of climate change. I will contextualize this. In Kenya, we lost 2.5 million heads of livestock in northern part of Kenya. Combined with Ethiopia and Somalia and Djibouti, we lost 9.5 million heads of livestock. So what did I have to do in Kenya? So in Kenya, I've had to increase resources meant for school feeding from 1.5 million children in school, under school feeding. We've had to scale up this year to 4 million kids in school to be put under school feeding, and we've had to rearrange the budget to provide for that. So when we say climate change is destroying our economies, we are not making statements. We are making statements of fact. And that is what is driving many of our economies in that direction. And let me contextualize this further. When I was first elected as a member of parliament in a rural constituency in Kenya, I represented a community that is so proud that they think debt is not a good thing. They are risk averse and very debt averse. So, to try and encourage the community that time, then there was this phrase, and I want to say it in the indigenous community. There was a phrase that Kai Kai person and there is Banan. Person is death. Banan is poverty. So it is said in this community, if you must die, it is better to die of debt than to die of poverty. Because you are dying anyway. So and so, to contextualize that into this debate, we don't want to die in this continent. We don't want
banks and concessional financing, and how we can finance our economies using resources that do not punish us. And when we make this proposition, we have tremendous respect for our multilateral development banks. They are doing their best. We have the best of respect for them. But we believe they can do better. We believe that there is an opportunity. We need to explore the SDR, Special Drawing Rights window. And this time round, we want to have that window when it's made available, because it is possible. Let those who need the resources get, not those who don't. In the last experience, those who did not need the resources got more than those who needed the resources. We need to have a paradigm shift this time round. And number two, we believe that it is possible to expand concessional financing through leveraging on the balance sheets of these institutions. And finally, to be able to unlock the resources that we need to be able to drive these new investment and financing opportunities, especially for green energy. We believe it is time to have a conversation about carbon tax. I said we need to have a conversation about carbon tax. And I mean we need to have a conversation about carbon tax. Yes. We believe it is the only way, it is among the ways that we can raise additional and adequate resources for us to finance our development. And while we are thinking about financing, for us in Africa, three things are very important. As they say in Kenya, mambo ni matatu. Number one, speed. It takes inordinate to access any meaningful resources. Number two, it requires scale, because we've all agreed that enormous resources are required. And number three, affordability, so that we all pay the same. And that is why this event is both Africa's climate summit and a global pre-COP28 convention. Africa is meeting and Africans are talking. The world is listening. We must use this opportunity to lead the world in a new direction towards a future that holds immense promise for both Africa and the entire world. The many initiatives showcased at this summit testify to the courage of African enterprise and innovators to pursue breakthroughs, exploit opportunities, develop models, and take risks to make our tomorrow better than our today. When the global stocktake is released, there will be another opportunity to test our courage and resolve by asking each other hard questions in the spirit of fashioning the new way to achieve rapid improvements. We have therefore committed to conclude this summit with a declaration which will firmly encourage everyone to keep their promises, even in hard times, as a matter of justice, to hold each other to account, to collaborate, and to innovate. This African moment is a global moment. We are in word and deed full stakeholders in this global journey and its primary navigators at this stage. I urge everyone at this summit to exercise bold leadership and contribute to our efforts to reconfigure global markets and international institutions around African aspirations and strategic goals. I call on each one of you to do their part so that the potential that lies in our continent can deliver opportunities for Africa's youth, communities, enterprises, and nations to actualize a future for all of us. It is a matter of long-standing African wisdom that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with others. We have a long way to go and no time to lose. In this moment of existential urgency of whole humanity, I dare say that we have our ancestors' permission to innovate a way not only to go fast, but also go together, provided we consult thoroughly, engage in good faith, collaborate effectively, and proceed inclusively. This is an emergency, and we must undertake climate action and green growth with this understanding. I thank you. God bless you. God bless Africa. Asante sana.
Has to have confidence in the bank. One is digital. SBM is digital. And that's why we say, as SBM, it's a smarter tomorrow. So
Your Excellency, you have some tasks to perform. So please come back to the stage.
I have been requested to ask the climate envoy from America, who is scheduled to take a flight, to take a few moments and come and speak to us. My good brother John Kerry is somewhere in this audience. Welcome, because he also has a declaration to make and an announcement to make. Welcome, John.
Mr. President, distinguished presidents, Your Excellencies, fellow ministers, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen, I have a feeling that after that extraordinarily powerful presentation by President Ruto, nobody should say anything. We should just act. Maybe I should start by just saying jumbo. Works. Mr. President, thank you for convening everybody here. Over the years, I've been privileged, Mr. Secretary General, like you. We've been at many of these conferences, and the words come easily. The actions seem to have been more difficult over time. It's a great honor for me to be able to be here representing President Biden at this very important summit. And I want you to know, as I listened, and as you listened, I could feel this room, something is happening. This is different. I feel that. This is different. I think, Mr. President, I would just say to you, your leadership is palpable. We feel it. What you have said today, there is such a clear path ahead for all of us. Africa is meeting. Africa is speaking. Africa is deciding. And nothing could make a greater difference, I think, on a global basis, given what you just heard from the President about the remarkable resources that are here in Africa, about the young people who are thirsty, hungry, for a future. And so Africa and this moment offer an enormous opportunity. This problem that we are facing is human-made. It's about pollution. It's not very complicated. It doesn't take a rocket scientist or a mathematician or equation work to its end in order to understand what's happening. Humanity is threatened by humanity. by the decisions that we are unwilling, it seems, to make. So, at this moment, I believe it is clear that Africa presents some of the greatest opportunity in the world. To do what? To win this battle about how we heat our homes, drive our vehicles, light our factories and our homes. This is about fundamental production of energy. And if we will make the right choices about that, the future is different for everybody. That's what's so attractive and important about what President Ruto was saying. You want to have a cleaner life? You want to have a healthier life? Less cancer? Eliminate 8 million people dying every single year because of the lack of quality air that we breathe? All of that comes from the unabated burning of fossil fuel. And it is challenging, if not threatening, our very planet that we all live on. So, 20 countries produce 80% of all the emissions. Mine is one of them. 20 countries. And it is critical for all of those 20 countries to immediately take steps to get on the path to the Paris Agreement, to align, to have the ability to keep 1.5 degrees alive. That will only happen if those 20 countries take the lead and make it happen. The crisis now is also, if justice is to mean anything, it certainly has to mean that if there's going to be a transition, everybody has to be able to share in the benefits of that transition. And right now, it is clear that you can't talk about a just transition, when some people, there's no transition at all. Or when some people, there is acute, unfair debt that swallows and drowns the choices that those countries have to make. My friends, adaptation, which wasn't on the front burner in the early years that we've been working at this, but it is now, and it should be, for the simple reason that without adequate adaptation, we don't make it. That's the predicament that we've created for ourselves for where we are now. So adaptation is critical, and the damage Mother Nature is telling us on a weekly, daily basis. Every 18 days, we have a $1 billion climate event somewhere on this planet. So adaptation is critical. President Biden has now launched a program called Prepare, the President's Emergency Program for Adaptation. And he has committed that we are going to help at least 500 million people in developing countries, especially in Africa, to be able to adapt to the worst impacts of this crisis. He has committed the United States to work alongside African nations to lead the way in adapting to and managing the impacts of the climate crisis. And as part of Prepare, he is providing, or will fight with the Congress and guarantee that we will provide $3 billion annually for adaptation for the $12 billion program that he believes is essential in order to be able to do our part to adapt to this challenge. It is why we are working with partners on the Transitional Committee this year to design an effective fund to help vulnerable developing countries respond to loss and damage. And it is why last year in Sharm el-Sheikh, the President decided that the United States needed to try to accelerate that process, that we joined with our friends in Europe and elsewhere to say that no, it's not adequate to do that over a 2-year period. We need to close out and understand where we're going with the Loss and Damage Fund in 1 year, this year, when we all meet in Dubai. So, in addition, as part of implementing Prepare, I'm pleased to announce today also we're going to provide an additional $30 million for climate-resilient food security efforts across Africa. First, $20 million to the Africa Adaptation Initiative for the Food Security Accelerator, and that will invest in agricultural businesses and help them create their own independent climate-resilient supply chains. Second, $10 million will go to the Climate Resilient Adaptation Finance and Technology Transfer Facility to scale technologies so that we can advance adaptation efforts like cold chain storage, which would help maintain the quality and the safety of food from the farm all the way to the homes of people in the world. We've learned that adaptation saves lives, creates jobs, and obviously it's just plain old common sense. Roads and bridges that are built today can only spur growth and curb poverty if they're still standing tomorrow. So in many ways, we have learned Africa suffers to a great degree the worst impacts of the climate crisis. And it is essential that every country step up to help other nations, and particularly Africa at this point, in order to be able to adapt to the climate impacts. But at the same time, we also have to continue to mitigate, and I think you all understand that. Of the 20 most impacted countries in the world, 17 are in Africa. That tells the story. We all have a moral obligation. The rest of the world, and particularly the developed world, the world that has those 20 countries with the biggest economies, we have a fundamental imperative for all of us to get this job done. Ladies and gentlemen, I am personally convinced we are going to get to a low-carbon, no-carbon economy. I see incredible things happening around the world. With the IRA in the U.S., we are breaking new ground on battery storage, on new technologies for wind turbines that will get 30, 40 megawatts of power from one turbine, new technologies for accelerating the transition with hydrogen and so forth, all of the things that President Ruto talked about. The vision that your president has put forward today is not just a vision for Africa, it's a vision for the world. And President Ruto is showing a path for everybody to follow, and I hope everybody will feel impacted by what he has said here. One of the great philosophers, I just close by sharing this with you, one of the great philosophers of the Enlightenment, when people decided that they would listen to science and not be browbeaten into somehow believing that everything was the sort of result of a vengeful God punishing people for their sins. But people decided and understood certain scientific facts make a difference. And they're real. And that has guided us for the centuries since then. Those pathfinders helped us to understand how to break ground and build a world in which we can have vaccines and deal with new technologies and go to the moon and so forth. We can win this battle, but we only win it if we make some fundamental decisions. Immanuel Kant, one of the great philosophers of that time, wrote, "Science is organized knowledge. Wisdom is organized life." Well, right now, if you look around you at the life we all lead all around this planet, science and the knowledge are unequivocal. All that is left for us is to summon the wisdom to organize the world to do what we know we have to do. That's the vision that I heard from President Ruto, and that is the vision that I'm convinced will come out of this week of great effort at this summit, which can help to prepare for a groundbreaking COP at which we do the job people are asking us to do. Thank you very much.
Excellencies, we are moving on to a very important session where we will be listening to each and every one of you as you make your national statements. But a few minutes before that, I want to usher in Zain to, and Your Excellency, President William Ruto, to undertake a signing ceremony here, and then we move on to the national statements. Thank you, Excellencies.
Thank you very much, Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very significant moment in the Africa Climate Summit. We are going to start this green revolution together and launch right now Kenya's green hydrogen strategy. I would like to request our leaders to step forward and sign off this important strategy. I'd like to invite Thomas Ostros, the Vice President of the European Investment Bank, Dr. Barbel Kofler, Parliamentary State Secretary of Germany, Her Excellency Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission, and His Excellency William Ruto, President of the Republic of Kenya. Please do come onto the stage. We have a symbol here on the stage that will be representing this agreement. And so we're going to ask all four of our leaders here to take one of the pens that you'll be given and sign this very important moment. And just for context, as we get set up over there, over 93% of Kenya's electricity comes from renewable energy sources, with a drive to reach 100% by 2030. I would like to invite also on the stage European Union ministers to come and stand behind our party here, as well as Mr. Davis Chirchir, Cabinet Secretary for Energy and Petroleum, and we can take a group photo of this extremely important moment as we launch Kenya's green hydrogen strategy. Green hydrogen plays a very central role in Kenya's green energy transformation. I mean, it really is going to offer a very significant potential to produce local green fertilizer and drive emissions-free transportation fuels. So this is a critical moment as we all gather here and take a photograph and really document and understand that this is a key step in reaching this ambition. And as the signing takes place, congratulations, everyone. A round of applause. And this really does demonstrate how Kenya is prioritizing economic expansion and charting a course for the country to harness the potential of green hydrogen as a key driver of energy transition, promotion of environmental stewardship, as well as the generation of jobs. Thank you so much, Excellencies, for this very critical moment and for launching the green hydrogen strategy. I'd like to invite Mike Gitonga to take over, the head of protocol.
Thank you very much, Zain. And distinguished guests, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to have a short interlude of music as we set up the stage in preparation for the statements that are going to be made immediately after. So I'll request that we have the stage set up for the next session that we're going to have. We'll have a short interlude of music, then we'll have the statements to follow shortly after. Thank you.
Part of the solution. We are part of the solution. I am part of the solution. You are part of the solution. Africa, rise, rise,